Dinosaur detectives are now convinced that dinosaurs had more ways to communicate than just by making a noise. During courtship especially, they would have used color and adornment to get their message across.
We're all familiar with certain kinds of display structures. Peacocks have wonderful showy tails which attract females. In deer, there are the magnificent antlers of the red deer stag and so on and so forth. These are display structures. And a number of dinosaurs had structures which were first and foremost very conspicuous. Many of the duck-billed dinosaurs had crests on the top of their heads. The horned dinosaurs had wonderful shields behind the skulls. These are structures which were clearly meant to be seen.
This dinosaur is called Centrosaurus, sharp-pointed reptile, because of the horns on the tip of its snout. A plant eater which topped the scales at 3 tons. During the mating season, it was capable of a fearsome display. Its 3-foot collar was rimmed with triangular lumps of horn-covered bone. By vigorously nodding its head, it warned off all but the most pugnacious of rivals. Not that this was without risk. With these, as with other dinosaurs, things could sometimes get out of hand.
I've been looking at injuries in duck-billed dinosaurs, and these features can tell us many interesting things about the lifestyle of these dinosaurs. And this animal has a series of ribs that have all been broken in a straight line and all rehealed to the same degree. We know that this injury occurred at the same time. What I think is happening here is that rival males during mating times would fight over females and may have kicked at each other with the hind feet, causing these kind of injuries.
And even when you've secured a mate, there are perils still ahead.
Now, in a normal duck-billed dinosaur, the spine is nice and straight. And as you can see with this specimen, it has been buckled and pulled over to one side, as if a great weight has pressed straight down upon it. I've come to the conclusion that these injuries were caused during mating and where accidental injuries occurred during the actual act of mating. Now, these types of injuries only occur in adults and are only reflected in the very proximal or base of the tail, which is where the reproductive organs would be in this area here. I never find multiple injuries. Like, I never find an animal that has mated, been injured, and then re-injured itself. So it looks like it happened once during the animal's life. Maybe the injury made it shy away from mating in the future. Who knows?
Clue by clue, the evidence mounts on the habits and social life of dinosaurs, and not just from the odd skeleton. Here in the Badlands of Alberta, Phil Curry found clues that stretched across an area the size of a football field. In 1978, his team discovered a vast bone bed of 500 centrosaurs, apparently struck down in the prime of life. But how could this have happened, and what did it mean?
Well, bone beds are actually quite common, but it's not very often we find bone beds like this where you have only one species represented. Because of the large numbers of specimens here and the fact that they didn't come from very far upstream, it's most likely that these animals died trying to cross the river in flood. Now, this may seem like a rather fantastic explanation, but in fact there are modern analogies that show it still happens today. And in fact it happens quite frequently. Not that long ago, 10,000 caribou died in northern Quebec.
Thousands of caribou carcasses line the banks of the Kaniapiskau River in northern Quebec. Inuit work crews have started collecting the caribou out of the water before it freezes in 2 or 3 weeks. The decaying carcasses were strewn along a 50-kilometer stretch of the river and are now creating a major pollution threat to aquatic life. Biologists who inspected the riverbank were shocked.
Whenever you get large groups of herbivorous animals, whether they're dinosaurs or mammals, together and they're moving in some kind of a migratory pattern, they're likely to encounter some kind of a natural disaster that will wipe out large numbers of them during the course of the migration. Given the evidence we have now from Arctic Canada and Alaska, there's a very good chance that dinosaurs were taking advantage of the high plant productivity in the Arctic, because during the summer months, with 24 hours of sunlight during the daytime, plants just produce so much food that animals will always try and take advantage of it.
Covering up to 70 miles a day, the vast centrosaur herds swept northwards in the summer toward the Arctic feeding grounds. In the autumn, as the days began to draw in, a huge migration southward would begin. This cycle of life would be repeated, echoing the seasons 70 million years ago. Today, the remains of huge herds of dinosaurs are being discovered around the world. In Montana, a vast bone bed tells Jack Horner what happened to the young myosaurs after they left the nest.
It gives us a social picture on a grand scale. This is just a tiny piece of one of our bone beds. What it is a mass accumulation of myosaur skeletons ranging from yearlings to full-grown, and our conservative estimate is 10,000 individuals. The story, that we've been able to put together is that we have these large groups of herbivores that are migrating north to south up and down this thin piece of West America.
What was this place like at the time these dinosaurs roamed these plains?
80 million years ago, the Rocky Mountains were here, but they were about 30 miles west of here. And then there was a broad plain that came from the Rocky Mountains and extended all the way into eastern Montana. It was about 300 miles, and then came to that inland seaway extended from the Gulf of Mexico to the Arctic Ocean.
And if you're one of a herd of, say, 1,000 hadrosaurs moving around the countryside, you couldn't stay in one place for very long, simply because that number of animals would eat themselves out of house and home very quickly indeed. So you follow the food resource. Well, an obvious parallel would be caribou. So really one can envisage the herds of hadrosaurs moving much like caribou do, with perhaps the tyrannosaurs being similar to wolves, following the herds, picking off the lame, the infirm, and the young, and having a very similar relationship that we see today in caribou and wolves.
Guided by an acute sense of smell and aided by stereoscopic vision, the Tyrannosaurus would close in. Its prey secured, this superbly designed killing machine would tear apart its catch and down it in huge gulps. Some killers are smaller but are no less fearsome. In 1964, John Ostrom made a startling discovery. A new type of killer, a small lithe animal with a razor-sharp weapon, a wickedly hooked claw on its hind foot. He called it Deinonychus, terrible claw.
But Deinonychus certainly opened up a whole new window in viewing these animals. This animal clearly indicated extreme agility, activity, perhaps even intelligence, but these were very, very sophisticated animals, unlike our previous image of what dinosaurs were about.
Here were dinosaurs at their most terrifying. They weren't just active killers. They hunted in packs.
But we found the remains of at least 4 and probably 5 different predators, Deinonychus, that apparently were killed in the process of attacking a much larger prey animal, that these animals apparently hunted in packs, like wolves, which makes a lot of sense when you realize that the animal that they were trying to, and did, kill was 5 or 10 times larger than the